head to Dollar Tree and grab supplies to make these patriotic 4th of July home decor pieces today. Thank you all for stopping by Lavender and Lace. I'm Alicia. Welcome back to my viewers that come and see me each week, and hello and welcome if you are new here. Thank you for stopping by today. Please give this video a thumbs up and let's get started with these projects. If you can find these wooden plaques at your Dollar Tree, I suggest that you grab several of them. I have a hard time finding these a lot of times, so when they are in stock, I will try to grab at least 3 or 4 of the rectangle ones and also the circular ones as well. And for this project, I just sanded down all those rough edges before I started, and I used my antique wax from Waverly just to stain my wood piece. I did a pretty thick coat of this, and then I just used a baby wipe to wipe back that excess stain. And then I just grabbed my sanding block again and just went around all of the edges of this just to distress those a little bit. If you don't like that distress look, feel free to skip this step. And I just took a paper towel and just made sure to clean my wood piece really well, just remove all of that dust. And then I went into my Cricut design space and I wanted to kind of create a quilt block shape. And you can do this on your own. It's pretty easy to design your shape whatever you want. I just put in a square and some triangles, and I also put in the size rectangle of my wood piece that I am working with. I am a very visual person, and this will just help you make sure that you get everything measured and lined up correctly for whatever project that you are working on. So I just played around with that for a little while until I got the sizing right. So you could go this route if you want to, or you can actually go into just their images on Cricut Design Space and type out quilt square, and it pulls up a lot of options that you can choose from. And I choose not to subscribe to the Cricut Access. So this shape for me was 99 cents, which isn't a bad deal for this project. If you do have Cricut Access, you have the ability to look through all of their images and things, and you can choose whatever you want to, and you just have to pay that monthly subscription. I just opt not to do that because I don't use a lot of their images often. I will just find different things from other websites and places like that and just upload those to Cricut. That's just one option that you can have. And then I just sent this to my Cricut maker to cut that out, and I used some Dollar Tree vinyl. I like to keep that on hand to use for stencils and things. Sometimes it works great, sometimes it does not. And I do put my settings on premium vinyl and cut that on less pressure. And this one did not work very well for me the first time. So I actually wound up cutting out my stencil 3 different times. And I will show you what I did for the third part of that. So I just reverse weeded my stencil. I just removed all of that vinyl out of the design part that I wanted to paint onto my wood piece. And I still had some areas that did not cut out really well, so I just used my little Cricut blade and just cut that and kind of even that up a little bit better. And I just used some of this transfer tape that I get from Expressions Vinyl. You can also find this on Amazon, just to apply my vinyl to my wood piece. I just burnished that down really well. And I just removed that paper backing and centered that onto my wood plaque. And this vinyl does not stick really well to a stained surface. That's one of the other complaints that I have about Dollar Tree vinyl. But, you know, it's $1.25, so you get what you pay for. And I don't mind, you know, having to recut this or redo it if I need to, because it's not that expensive. So that center part of my design did not transfer, so I just peeled up all of those pieces like stickers and just applied those to the center, and that worked well for me for this project. This project was a little bit of trial and error. You live and learn, and you just kind of figure out what works best for you, maybe what you need to change up the next time. But once I had all of my stencil down, I just went over all of that with some Mod Podge. I just like to use one of the foam pouncers that you can find at Dollar Tree to apply that. And I dried that before I applied my paint with my heat gun. And I have this flamenco red and the Admiral blue from Apple Barrel, and I picked that up from Walmart. And I just did a couple of coats of the blue, once again using my foam pouncer, and I just tap off a lot of that excess paint so I don't get a lot of runs or anything like that. But putting down that Mod Podge helps prevent your paint from bleeding underneath your stencil, and it also just helped to hold down this vinyl a little bit better, just to keep that in place. And I just peeled up this section that I had been working on with the blue. And I mentioned that I did have to cut out this particular design 3 separate times, and the third time was kind of a mistake. It turned out to be a happy accident, as Bob Ross would say, because I had all of those little pieces that I could use to just go back over that blue, so I could tape those off in essence and just be able to stencil my other colors in easily. And that worked out really well. So I just took all of those pieces and applied them to all of the blue areas that I had painted. And then I was able to just go in with my white as well as my red paint. And I also did the Mod Podge. I'm getting ahead of myself. I did another layer of that Mod Podge as well before I put down my other 2 colors. And for these, because they were smaller areas, I just cut a makeup sponge in half and used that for my red and white areas. And I just used another piece of that vinyl that I had cut out to go over that square in the center, and then just applied my white paint to that square area in the center. And I did 2 coats of the red and white as well. And once everything was dry, I just removed all of that vinyl. And it's not perfect, but I think that's why I like the rustic farmhouse look. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I just went over the top of that with a fingernail file just to rough that up a little bit more and clean that off. And this is what it looks like. I think this would be absolutely gorgeous if you did several of these, maybe 6 or 9 of them. They would be beautiful on your wall and do different shapes and quilt squares. But let me know what you guys think about this one. I found some really cute 4th of July patriotic designs on Creative Fabrica, and I will link those for you guys in the description box so you can check those out. And I just uploaded those into Canva and sized those for the size that I would need for my t-shirt, and I made sure to mirror my designs. You want to be sure that you do that when you are using any type of iron-on product, and I am using some iron-on printable paper. I will show you exactly what kind that I use in just a little bit. And then all you have to do is print that out, super easy. And I also found this one for Graceland. We have a golden retriever, Zoe, and she and Graceland are just the best of friends. So Graceland loved this design, so I had to do that one for her. And this is the particular brand of iron-on transfer paper that I found. I picked this up on Amazon, and I will link that for you as well. Just be sure that you follow your particular type of paper instructions so you don't mess up your project. And I just printed that out, and I have the Epson Eco Tank, and it works well for these projects. I like the color that I get, and it just does really well for me. This is also a very easy and inexpensive way that you can add a colored design to your t-shirt, especially if you don't have a sublimation printer. And then all you have to do is cut out around your design. You want to get as close to that design as possible and remove as much of that white background as you can. This just makes your finished product look a whole lot better. And I picked up our shirts that I am using at Hobby Lobby, and you can find those, I think they're either 30 or 40% off most of the time. And for my iron-on paper, I had to iron my shirt first just to remove any of the wrinkles. And my particular pack also came with these guides to help you center your design, so that was very helpful while I was working on this project. And it also comes with this piece of paper, this tissue paper that you can put in between the layers of your shirt just so that ink doesn't go through onto the back. And you want to preheat your iron while you are getting everything lined up and just follow the instructions. Mine said to press firmly and iron on for 3 minutes. Whatever you decide to use might be a little bit different than that. And then all I had to do was peel off that paper backing to reveal my design. And this one is a little bit stiff once you get that ironed on there, but I have made several things with this and I am very happy with how this turns out. And you do want to pre-wash your shirt before you iron on your design. And then you will also want to fix your design once you have the paper peeled off. And these packages usually come with the either paper or the silicone paper that you need to do that. And here is Gracelyn's design. She did her shirt herself, and she just did the same steps as I did and just peeled off that paper backing to reveal her design. And I love how cute these are. These are super festive and will look great for us to wear for all of our 4th of July get-togethers and even throughout the summer cookouts and barbecues and things like that. And just another note, if you make these, you do want to wash your garment inside out just to preserve the image that you put on there. But what do you guys think about these? For this project, I grabbed one of the wooden rings that I had in my stash, as well as this wooden bead piece of decor. They had several of these at Dollar Tree this year with different little embellishments on the end of those. And I just removed the hat from that. I will be using that again in this project. And then I just removed all of the beads from that string. And I also wanted to remove all of the beads from my wooden ring as well. So I just had to use some pliers to help me undo that loop to be able to unfasten that. And then I did actually use some wire cutters and just cut that wire to make it easier to remove all of my beads. And then I just created my own pattern and re-threaded all of those beads all along this wreath. I did red, white, blue, and one of the natural ones. And while I was threading these, I did keep in mind that I wanted to leave an opening on either side of this ring, so I did measure that occasionally as I was threading these just to make sure that I was leaving myself enough room to be able to put my fabric in there that I'm going to be showing you guys in just a little bit. So I just kept measuring those and made sure that I had the same amount of beads on the top on either side. And then I just used my pliers once again to recreate that loop at the top and just fasten this back together. And I wanted to distress my beads just a little bit, so I used my antique wax from Waverly to do that. And you can add as much or as little of this wax as you want to. It's just your preference, however you want this to look. And I did try to hold those tightly with one hand and push that all the way around to the loop on the top. And that just made these a little bit more stable and easier to apply that wax to. And I just flipped it over and did the same thing to the back side. And this is a piece of burlap that I have had in my stash that I have used for several different projects. And I just cut a slit in that and ripped off a piece that I thought would be wide enough to fit in the gap that I had left for my beads. And then I did just trim that down because it was just a little bit too long for this project. I did want to leave a little bit of overhang so that I would be able to glue that on the back. And it was a little bit too wide, so I just ripped off another strip of that as well. And then I took some of those threads and just pulled those off to give me a little bit more frayed edge on either side. And I did measure this with my ruler, and I wanted to be able to know the size that I would need as a template in Cricut Design Space. So mine was about 9 by 4 inches once I measured everything out, and I also marked out the center of this so I would be able to apply my vinyl. And I just cut this out with my Cricut Joy. And be sure that you follow your manufacturer's instructions for whatever iron-on vinyl that you are using. This is just one of the brands that I pick up from Hobby Lobby. And I use my little Cricut mini press just to apply that vinyl. And I always like to go over the back side of my fabric as well. That just seems to give me very good results when I'm using iron-on vinyl. And then I just removed that transfer sheet that this comes with and applied that to my ring, and I just made sure that I had the right amount of beads once again. Made sure that I had that centered on here, and then I just used a small amount of hot glue on either side of this wire beaded ring just to attach that fabric to the front side so it would be easier to glue that onto the back, and made sure that I had this stretched tightly but not too tightly. I didn't want to pull this too tight or it would change the shape of my ring. So I just folded over the excess fabric that I had left and just glued that down on either side with some hot glue. And I have this really pretty Patriotic fabric in my stash. I believe my husband got this for me for Christmas. He likes to give me crafty supplies, and I haven't been able to use it, and I am glad I found this and was able to use it for this project. So I just cut some slits in the bottom of this fabric. They were probably a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch wide, and then I just ripped all of those strips of fabric, and I did that with some of the burlap as well. And then I also cut down some pieces of navy blue ribbon as well as some lace that you can find from the Dollar Tree. And I just started in the middle section on the bottom of my beaded ring, and I just tied that once. I didn't do a knot, and I did that with all of my fabric pieces and my ribbon. Just did an alternating pattern. You can use whatever that you have in your stash for this, but I do like to use different fabrics, different patterns, and different textures. That just gives you that farmhouse look. And I did not go all the way up to that fabric piece that says "Let Freedom Ring" with all of my ribbons and other strips of fabric. I just thought it looked better to only have them covering part of the bottom of this. And I did not want all of my pieces to be the same length, but I did trim up those fabric pieces a little bit more because they were a lot longer than the rest of these. And I pulled some different colors of greenery that I had in my stash. I had a boxwood that came from Walmart, and that other piece came from Dollar Tree. And I need something to be able to glue those onto the top of my ring, so I just cut out a piece of cardboard, and I took that hat that came on that wood beaded garland at the beginning of the video and just added some antique wax to that to make that look a little bit more rustic and old. And I just glued that cardboard circle to the top of my wreath and added my pieces of greenery with some hot glue, and I used that Uncle Sam hat to help hold that greenery into place until my glue was set. And I thought it looked a little uneven, so I added some more greenery on the other side of my hat as well. And that cardboard piece really helped me be able to add my greenery as well as my hat. So I just turned that over and added the hot glue to the back side of that and just held that in place until it was set. And then I just tied a piece of jute twine to the top of my beaded wreath. And that is it for this one. I just love how this one turned out. I love all of the different textures from the fabric and the ribbons from this one. Let me know what you guys think about this. Okay guys, this project is my absolute favorite from today's video. I just started with one of the wooden signs that you can find at Dollar Tree. I just removed the hanger and the staples from the back, and I also removed the star from the front. I will set that aside and use it for another project. And I hate glitter, so I try to cover that up as quickly as possible when I'm working with any of these signs that have all of that glitter. I just used some craft paper that I have in my stash and just traced out the size that I would need to apply to this. And I always just like to use an Elmer's glue stick to get this applied to my signs. It just works very well for me. So I just applied that glue to half of my sign to start with, and this paper was rolling up on me, which actually was a good thing. That helped me be able to apply that straight onto this sign and just get everything lined up with each of the edges. And for the other side, I'm still having to brush some of that glitter off. That's one reason I hate it. It just gets everywhere. But I did just do one coat with my Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster. I was not going for full coverage on this because I'm going to be decoupaging some napkins on here. And before I do that, I wanted to kind of measure out how far down I would need to apply my napkin. So I'm going to be using this wired trash can for this project, and I just marked where that would be going onto my sign. And then I just applied a thin coat of Mod Podge and let that dry completely. And while that was drying, I just prepped my napkins and got those ready. These came from the Dollar Tree as well, and these were just 2-ply, so I only had to remove one layer of that. And I did just cut these down. I just cut out each of those squares on the napkins. I was kind of hoping that only one of the sections had the blue part with the stars. I would have liked that better for this, but it didn't, so I just went with it. And once that Mod Podge was dry, I just applied my napkin and used my little Cricut mini heat press and this Teflon sheet to protect my napkin, and just applied those all the way down the sign to where I had marked. And I just used one of my jumbo fingernail files to remove that excess napkin and applied another thin layer of Mod Podge just to seal everything in. And once that layer had completely dried, I went back in with with my antique wax from Waverly and just distressed the edges as well as the entire surface. And now to start working on that trash can, I just used some of my tin snips that I got from Walmart. These are a great tool for crafters. If you don't have them, you need to check those out. And I just cut this down. I probably used about half of this basket. I just went along the top first, down the side and the bottom until I had my piece of wire that I would be able to work with. And this part was a little bit challenging for me to figure out how I wanted to get that wire on there. It did kind of form very well to this piece of wood, and I took just a couple of bread ties to help hold that in place until I was able to get that secured with some jumbo popsicle sticks and some hot glue. And I just used some E6000 as well as some hot glue just to attach these popsicle sticks to the back. And I did just hold those in place until that glue had set. And I also cut one of those popsicle sticks in half and just did some cross pieces as well. I thought this would help me have a little bit more security so my basket portion won't fall off of my sign. And this is some drop cloth. I got this from Amazon. You get a lot and it is a very good price, so you guys might want to check that out. I have several things linked in my description box that you can check out for yourself. So I just cut that down to size, what I would need to be able to wrap around my basket as well as fold up over the bottom portion as well. And I just wrap that around to the back, and I attach this with some hot glue. And if you don't have any of this drop cloth or burlap fabric or anything like that, you could use craft paper. That would work really well for this project. And I tried to pull this tightly from the other side so I wouldn't have any really loose fabric on the front of this. And I just used more hot glue on there and just secured that in place. And I didn't even glue down that top portion along the rim of my basket. It just folded in nicely. And I will be adding some florals that help hold that down as well. So I just folded up the bottom portion of my fabric and just trimmed off any excess, and then just used some hot glue to help hold everything in place. And just added additional hot glue here and there to any of the areas where my fabric was not glued down. And of course I had to make my basket portion look a little bit old and worn, so I just took that antique wax and just went over that lightly, kind of heavier along the top and the bottom of this. And I just love how that wire pattern actually started to kind of show through when I added this antique wax. And then I just used some extra craft paper that I have on hand, and I also saved the packing paper that comes in my Amazon packages and just wadded that up and added it to the bottom of my basket. And I pulled out several different florals and greenery that I had on hand. I was just trying to decide which ones that I wanted to use for this. So I just cut down each of my picks into individual pieces. And then I just started adding them to my basket. And you could also use some fiber fill or stuffing like that if you don't have the craft paper. But that craft paper just helped hold all of my florals in place. And I don't have any rhyme or reason for this, you guys. I just kind of add what I like, what I think looks best, and what I am happy with. And you can just play around with that until you like the way that it looks. And I had this star in my stash. I think I picked this up from Hobby Lobby last year when all of their 4th of July stuff was on sale. And I also have some rusty safety pins that I just attached that to the basket with. Added some hot glue to be able to keep that in place where I wanted it. And then I just used my crocodile and cut out some holes at the top and added some jute twine for a hanger, and that is it for this one. I absolutely love how this one turned out, you guys. This is a very good sized piece and it looks perfect in my dining room. What do you guys think about this one? Thank you all so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed the projects. Please give this video a thumbs up if you did. Also, be sure you click that notification bell so you don't miss any of my future videos that I have coming out. Please let me know which of these was your favorite in the comments. I always enjoy reading those and I respond to each of them. I hope you all have a blessed day and a happy 4th of July, and I will see you in the next one.